Clear.
Excellent. Oh, I can hear myself as well. Could you put me on mute at your
Yes,
end?
yes. I just want to say that there's almost 50 people now in the room and 30 on the collaborate. So please go ahead. You are the last presenter today.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me. I'll start off by introducing myself. My name is Richard Burrows, and I'm the analytics specialist for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. And I'm going to be talking today about X-ray analytics for Moodle and Moodle rooms. This is a relatively new solution from Blackboard and an incredibly powerful one. And as I talk through it, one of the things I want to call out is quite the depth of the data which we're using as we are building these reports and making predictions. Okay, so I'm going to switch my my camera off because I find looking at myself awfully distracting. So I'm going to switch myself off there and I'll take you through this presentation, and there should be time at the end for some questions. Okay, so when we talk about analytics, I want to kind of go over a number of kind of topics as I take you through this. I want to first look at education's goals for learning analytics, and then take you deeper into our approach for learning analytics for Moodle and Moodle rooms. And then I'm going to do a quick run through of some key reports focusing upon student success. So I think it's kind of useful to set the context and really why is analytics becoming such an interesting topic, or a topic of interest in education today. From where I stand, it seems like in education we're asked to do more for less every year, but still improve quality. We have to accommodate ever-increasing student numbers. Here in the UK, we call it widening access, but often it's taking students who are maybe slightly less prepared for a university career and have, and maybe don't have quite the same academic background as students previously. We're also doing increasing access. We're also doing this in an environment of reduced funding. So numbers are going up, funding is going down. It's driving us towards greater efficiencies. There's also greater transparency. Here in the UK, government is taking an increasingly focused look at what educational institutions are doing, and actually trying to increase the transparency out to parents and other funding bodies and people like that, as well as the students. And then ultimately, there's also this greater accountability, both in terms of qualifications, but also in terms of employability. So there's lots of different pressures on educational institutions, and really I think it's an opportunity to take a kind of leaf from business, and to these kind of pressures are demanding smarter ways of working, and taking that leaf from business, they often do this by making better use of data. So how can we do this? Well, what are the typical goals? Do lots of consultation, talking to different groups of people around the world, in actual fact, and it's all about things like increasing the proportion of learners who achieve their learning goals, increasing the percentage of students that pass, monitoring learners' progress and taking action quickly to keep them on track. For some countries, it's about improving the time to graduation. And for others, it's about institutions, it's about improving student retention. There's another side to this as well, and one which I'm going to touch on today, but I won't have much time to dwell upon. But at the heart of this is also about improving the quality of teaching and learning, and also improving the quality of the courses. So making that fundamental change. It's not just about catching students who are at risk. It's also about making the fundamental changes which allow us to be allow those students to be successful. Okay, so a bit of a short introduction, and it's useful to contextualize our approach to analytics. Okay, this is a well-known diagram which describes the different types of analytics, and in the bottom left we have descriptive analytics, and this is often synonymous with course reporting. Course reporting that you might have in Moodle, or that you might extend through the use of other solutions like X-ray. You also have diagnostic analytics, which is using that data and diving into that data to start to understand why something is happening, to examine the data, and we can look at some of how that we can support that. And then you've also got predictive analytics, and this is one of the key areas of interest for many people. But that's about, if you have this collection of data about the way students interact with their courses and the outcomes, then you can start to identify students who are deviating from that path and predict their outcomes ahead of time, so that you can intervene early. The diagram also talks about prescriptive analytics. We don't do prescriptive analytics, certainly not yet, but that would be actually using all that mass of data to start to define how we teach a particular student. At Blackboard, our approach is to equip the instructor or the advisor with the information which they need to make those interventions. We're not about dictating how a course would be delivered. Okay, so a more practical way of looking at this is in these kind of 3 academic work streams: identifying the students in need of support, informing course management, and informing or improving course design. And that's kind of a structure which I'm going to use for today. So, taking the first one, identifying students in need of support. When I first started to think about this, I thought it was all about reaching the right students, identifying those students early who need support. But it actually goes a little bit beyond that. Most institutions have a capacity or bandwidth problem about accommodating the number of students who they potentially need to support. So how can you become more efficient at that? Well, it's all about reaching students at the right time. So that might be a student that starts off well, but starts to struggle later, or a student who initially demonstrates characteristics of risk, but later thrives within the university environment. And of course, being able to tackle those students at the right time means that you can focus on the right people. It's also about empowering instructors. Bringing people together helps you to, if you bring people together, then to help the students, then you can increase the efficiency. It's also about providing a shared view of information across the courses and obviously providing ease of adoption. So, moving on. Yarko. I want to give you a short introduction to an institution. It's actually a Blackboard Learn client, but who are using student data to support students, to help them engage better with their courses and to drive interventions. Yarko, could you run the video locally for me, please?
Richard, do you have a link for the video?
I sent you the file. Did you not get it?
Sorry, I missed it.
Oh, right. 1 second. Right, I can try and run this locally. I think I'm going to. I'm going to have to narrate it. Yeah.
It's Nathan here. Is it embedded in the presentation?
No, because I've taken it out because it runs better. I'll just check it's not in this one. I don't think it is. It's not. I can run it from my desktop. 1 second. So I'm going to share my desktop. I'm not sure we'll get sound though. That's the problem. Can you see the presentation? I'll put it into, can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to pause this and narrate it as it goes through because I don't think you hear the sound when I run it from here.
Yes, we don't hear the sound.
Oh, excuse me.
Richard, we don't hear the sound.
Okay, so you don't hear the sound, and I've had this problem before. So their project is called the Early Warning Signals, and they're providing reports about engagement, and they provide these reports to the students, to the instructors, and to their advisors. I'll do this, I'll keep narrating it as I go through. So they're providing these reports. So one of the things they call out is that that a student sticks a better chance of passing their course if they engage with the online course materials, and information about the way that students are engaging with the course is being shared with the students, with the instructor, and with the advisor. I can't hear the I can't see the comments as I do this. I'll keep narrating as we go through. Ow! Excuse me. Right, I'm going to give up on this because it's not working as well as it should. I'm struggling a little bit here I'm shutting down the presentation as I start to.
Richard.
Yep.
I've got the link to the video locally. Bear with me 2 seconds.
Okay. Do you want to run it?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, Richard, we are back on the
Perfect.
Collaborate.
Thank you. Okay, just jumping back to the correct part. So as you heard in that presentation, they are effectively providing different data, different points of reference to the different stakeholders, and as it ends, they're just in a moment at the moment running effectively evaluating that system, and it's had extremely positive feedback so far from their students, within the high 90s% of students finding it a useful addition to the course. But it hasn't run all the way through. So I thought I'd just bring in a US customer, comment on a US customer, Indian River State College, which is a university in Florida, and how they've used exactly the same system and exactly the same approach. And so their online campus has around 15,000 students enrolled per year, but as with many fully online campuses, they struggle to meet the achievement rates of the on-site campus, and it was some 7% below the student success rates for the on-campus students. And just over they've implemented this for 3 semesters. And in those 3 semesters, they managed to close the attainment gap between on and off campus students. But when you talk to them, the key part about this was effectively bringing people together and focus upon student success. All right, so it's interesting, but Indian River is actually one of our first clients to move to the next level. The system which we were using there was all about reporting on courses as they ran. But you can, once you have that data collection, you can also start to implement predictive analytics to look and make predictions about which students will pass or fail, and those that need success. Sorry, those that need support. So this is one of the functions of X-ray analytics for Moodle and Moodle Rooms. It gives a very clear indication of those students on the course who are struggling, and starts to make predictions about their success as well. So obviously it needs to be clear, and this is a quick grab of the report which you get. But it takes different types of data to make that prediction about student success. It takes engagement data which tracks the progress of the student over the period of the course. It also, using data from the discussion forums, starts to understand the social connectedness of the students in the course, and provides a sociogram like this. And it also ties that with the grade performance or the academic performance of the student in the course, and presents supporting information through reports like this, which break down the performance across the piece. As I mentioned, I'll go into this in slightly more detail. I'll just summarize this. It also supports improved course delivery and design. And I always think of this kind of picture kind of sums it up. Catching students who are at risk is one thing, but if you can do the fundamental changes to the way your courses are delivered and the types of courses that you deliver, you can have that kind of bring the healthy eating and exercise to the situation. And so some of the data points which we can use to improve course management or inform course management are things like frequency of logins and last logins, the level of online engagement that understands students' study patterns and how that compares to the study patterns of their peers, and how it compares to study patterns of successful students. Obviously, their academic performance in terms of assessed and formative and summative assessment within the course, and also uniquely to to X-ray the social connectedness of students. So being able to identify students who are isolated on the course and change the way that you're teaching the course to try to involve those students more. Because we know that one of the reasons students tend to drop out of courses is that they don't have that social connectedness with other students. We can also use data to improve the course design. So things like identifying the proportion of students at risk on a course, and understanding maybe the way the course is being taught isn't appropriate for that level of student, or things like that. So comparing the level of risk between courses and over courses. Looking at things like the level and consistency of engagement in a course. So some courses might have a very frequent and managed engagement. Others might have just engagement at the beginning and nothing through to cramming activity at the end. So you can start to think about learning technologists can start to think about bringing activities into the course which would keep student engagement. We've been doing some work in this area about identifying those course designs which are effective in that. And then also looking at the way the course is assessed and whether or not that is serving the students well. Things like, does formative assessment match up well with the final summative assessment? So lots of different data points we can bring to it. Here's a simple chart of the engagement of the students in the course. And this one's quite good. It's got, you can see, a regular and consistent activity throughout the weeks of the course. I have other examples where there's just a peak of activity at the beginning and nothing at the end. So I wanted to, in terms of a short demo, I wanted to look at this in the context of identifying a student at risk and really walk you through how we would use that data. Well, so when the instructor logs into the course, the first thing that they see is this kind of summary at the top of the page, which outlines, effectively the risk status of the course. So here we can see that we've got 3 out of 12 students on the course we consider at risk, and that risk is most likely that they will not pass the course. Okay, and what we do is, clicking on the link, it gives you a very easy to interpret color-coded display of the students who we consider high risk, those at medium risk, and of course those who have no risk. But what you might want to do then is to understand whether the risk, our perceived risk of the student, is changing over time. So here we have a risk history. The risk history shows, for instance, that Beth started out with a medium risk but has her risk increased, and for other students on the course, that risk decreased over time. So we can start to think about which students we need to intervene with, and also identify where our interventions are being successful. Okay, so sitting behind that are those different metrics, and we might want to dig into those different metrics a little further. So for instance, who's active in the course? This chart takes a little more interpretation than you might initially consider, because here we see Beth Singh has a very high regularity of activity in the course. But when you take that into account with the time actually spent, we find that she's actually not very active. She's regularly active, but not very active at all. And you will see that Beth is one of our high-risk students in the course. So here we're getting a summary of the amounts of time which the student is spending in the course, and we can start to look at that in the context of other activity. Here we have the academic performance of the student, and it's broken down into the overall grade, but also looking at the student's performance in different aspects of the course. So in assignments, in the quizzes, in graded discussion forums, and other graded items. And we might see a difference between performance in assessment and some and other aspects of the course. But again, we can start to see those students who are struggling, those students which are performing well. And then uniquely to X-ray analytics, we can also look at this idea of social isolation. Yeah, and so this is the interactions in the course between the instructors and the students, and the intensity of those interactions. Okay, and here again we're calling out. I had a question there. Was it social isolation? Yes, I think this is a kind of, we're identifying social isolation in the course, and again we're seeing Beth and a number of other students highlighted in red who are not interacting with their peers on the course. And as we manage that, we might try to bring Beth and John and Jerome, think about including them in different types of coursework, different types of activities, to make them a greater part of the class. Okay, which we know is a key indicator of certainly for student retention. Okay, I'm going to pause there and just take the opportunity to take some questions if there are any questions. It gives you a little outline of what we're doing with X-ray analytics for Moodle and Moodle Rooms.
Thank you, Richard. The one question coming.
Päivi from Humak. As a linguist, I'm asking, how do you measure the positive interaction and compare that to negative interaction? They could be quarreling between each other, and then you have a positive line that they are interacting all the time.
It's a very good point. One which I can't address directly, but it is a very interesting question. Here we have one of the other things which X-ray does is identifies critical thinking in the discussion. Now, I think when we thought about this, we thought about it in the context of the use of critical thinking language, and also originality, and also in the direction of the communication. Okay, so if it bends to the right, the communication is going, in this instance, for instance, it bends to the right, so it is going from Teresa to Debbie, or from Thea to Dominic. Yeah, there's less communication back from Debbie to Teresa. So we are doing some of that language analysis. It's not been identified in terms of quarreling, much more identified in terms of critical analysis in the context of the course. You might actually say that quarreling, if it is critical analysis, is actually quite healthy in a course, as opposed to the other kind of quarreling, which is possibly less productive. One of the things we also provide is a word cloud. So potentially, if there was quarreling, then that would start to show up in the word cloud.
Tuleeko muita kysymyksiä? Okay, Richard, thank you so much for coming to our event at short notice. We have a long day being here, and we thank you for the presentation.
My pleasure. If there's any questions, you can feed them back through Jarkko and the team.
Okay.
It's my pleasure to join you today.
Thanks, Richard. Bye.
Thank you.